Support for the Bittersweet Life comes from our listeners. This week, I want to thank Jenny for becoming a yearly supporter over on Patreon. If you love this show, keep it alive by going to patreon.com/thebittersweetlifepodcast and hear all those fancy bonus episodes too. 2 bonus episodes every month, plus an archive, things that you're not going to hear on the regular show. Lots of fun, lots of games. There are links to donate in the show notes. And if you love this show and you think you really would like it to be there week after week, your donations are vital. Thank you so much. Welcome to Rome. This is The Bittersweet Life with Katie Sewell and Tiffany Parks. Hello, this is The Bittersweet Life. I'm Katie Sewell.
I'm Tiffany Parks.
Tiffany, back from vacation, back to Rome. Katie, still in Seattle. Hasn't gone anywhere. But that's
yet.
Fine.
Not yet. You have something in the works.
That's true. Not yet. But Tiffany, we're going to talk a little bit about the trip, but specifically about you went to Austria, which is right across the border from northern Italy. And we're going to take a look at Italy versus Austria. And really that bigger question of how different can a place be when it's really not that far away from each other? You know, like it's really close to one another, kind of like Washington State to Canada. Here we are very close together. So where should we begin?
Well, first of all, one thing I always loved about Europe and traveling in Europe and eventually living in Europe was the extreme cultural differences that you find in a very small landmass when you really look at it. I've always loved that. I've always appreciated the differences between cultures. But I was struck by a number of things when I was on this trip, and I scribbled some of the things down because, like you said, it's really not that far. Now, if you were to go to the far, far north of Italy, the Alto Adige region, you might not, if I were from there, if I were living there, I might not experience such a big difference, especially because a lot of people speak German in northern Italy. But it's not just the language. So, but coming from Rome, coming from central Italy, but even I think as far north as Milan, you would get the same sorts of differences, I think. And so, yeah, it just struck me that, wow, like you said, it's really close. If you were to take the train, which we flew because we went to Vienna, which is significantly further away, but if you were to take like this fast train from Rome to Milan and then catch a train from Milan to the south of Austria, I mean, you're looking at maybe 5 or 6 hours in a train. It's really not that far. And yet there were so many differences that I noticed, a lot of them right away.
Yeah, because 5 or 6 hours, if I was to take a train for 5 or 6 hours in the United States, because it's so large, I'd barely be out of Washington State.
Right.
Like I might be into Montana.
Right, exactly.
Which is culturally different, but not extremely culturally different. So, all right,
yeah.
Let's hear one of the differences.
Well, I mean, the first one is not going to surprise you at all, that it's so much quieter.
well, we've already established long ago on this show that Rome is the loudest place on Earth. So.
Right. Well, yeah, I don't know about on Earth, but probably one of the loudest places in Europe. But I mean, for example, we were staying at this hotel for about a week of the time. We were there for 2 weeks, but 1 week we were staying at a sort of spa resort in the mountains of southern Austria. And, there were people from all over Europe there. Some Americans, very few, but occasionally there were Americans. There were Brits, there were Scots, there were lots of Swiss people, obviously German and Austrian. There were some Italians. Most of the Italians who were there seemed to be Northern Italian by their accents. And what I noticed was just like, the only people talking loud were Italians and Americans. It was funny. But even Brits, not just Americans, Italians, Americans, and Brits. But I did say to Claudio, because at one point Claudio was like, listen, the only people who you can hear are the Italians. Like we'd be like in the dining room or something, and everybody's talking so quietly and having this extremely, undertone conversation. And the Italians are, and I did say at one point, I was like, is it that the Italians are louder, or is it just because we understand the language, it pops to us? And I do think that's part of it, because there were some British people sitting near us, and man, I could not stop. I mean, I felt like I was constantly listening in on their conversations, not on purpose, but just because either they were talking so loud or it was just because I was like, I'm in this country where I don't speak the language. And so my antennas are just like way out there for the languages that I do know. And I
Mm-mm.
pick up on them immediately. So maybe a combination of both.
What was Claudio's reflection on the Italians being so loud?
Well, Claudio actually is, I think, very odd in that he, as an Italian, because he speaks like when we're out in public and we're having a private conversation, quote unquote private, like it might not be about anything terribly personal, but it's not, something that we're broadcasting. He speaks so quietly. It actually gets on my nerves. It's no.
Yeah.
It's a serious annoyance for me because it's a foreign language to me, even though I speak it, it's harder for me to understand someone speaking at that volume so quietly. And
Mm-hmm.
like, I hate the fact that usually when we're out to dinner, like I have to like actively sit forward in my seat or I will not be able to hear what he's saying. Like he basically whispers when
Mm.
we're out together. And it absolutely drives me crazy. But on the other hand, I do appreciate that he's not screaming. So
It's yeah,
um
that's funny. Derek's so similar too. Also talks so quietly when we're out in public, and I come from a career in radio, which means my ears are already ringing. So half the time I'm like, "What? I can't even hear you." Like, what? I'm like, no one next to us can hear you. I
I
cannot
know.
hear
I
a word
kept
you're
saying that to
saying.
him. I'd be like, not only can nobody hear us, nobody can even understand us. There's almost no Italians here,
Yeah,
and they certainly can't hear us because they're talking so loud.
right.
So that's something that I have pointed out to him many times. That
Yeah,
I'm like, can you speak up? Because I don't know what you're saying. And sometimes I just want to lean back in my chair.
and be like, can't
So
hear you. Can't hear you right here. Yeah. So before we leave that noticing of where you were was so much quieter than being in Rome. Now that you're back in Rome, how do you feel about the noise after being in such a quiet
I
place?
I noticed it as soon as we were on the airplane. I was
Hmm.
like, oh my gosh, you can tell like we're around a whole bunch of Italians now because everyone is being so much louder.
Hmm.
And I do appreciate, I'm not into the whispering because quite frankly, nobody cares to like eavesdrop on your conversation if you're speaking quietly, like no one's going to bother.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I appreciate the courtesy of speaking quietly so that other people can have a quiet, tranquil lunch or whatever it is, and not have to constantly like, be hearing people squawking. So
Uh-huh.
I prefer the quiet.
And did the
So
quiet extend past the talking? You know how, like in Rome, you can often hear like a motorbike zig by or the garbage glass crashing into
oh
the back
yeah,
of a thing. I mean, did you find that like general life was also more quiet or not?
definitely. But I think a lot of that was that we were, I mean, at least for that week, we were in the countryside, we were in the mountains. And so clearly it was more quiet simply because of geographically where we were. But I mean, probably it's even the big cities, even Vienna is much more quiet than Rome. But the thing that really struck me was the people and the talking.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, what else did
Yeah.
you find while you were there?
Well, okay, so this is going to sound really weird, but and I think this is a situation where like you got two extremes because you've got the Italian extreme and you've got the what appeared to me to be a bit of an Austrian extreme. It seemed like the parents were much more like quote unquote negligent of their children. And but I have to temper that with the fact that Italians are overly cautious with their children and they're overly protective, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Especially when it comes to dirtiness. Like Italians are terrified of anything that's dirty. It's a cultural thing. It does
Mm.
not extend beyond the borders. Like the French do not have this issue. And in fact, Italians think that French people are dirty, which I don't think is true, but that's
Mm-hmm.
what they say. So Italians are extremely like careful about germs and kind of over the top with it. So I noticed that we were on a train and I made the mistake because we took 3 or 4 different trains during this trip. And I made the mistake when I was purchasing the trains that on the first trip, I got us seats in the family zone. Now, what was I thinking? I don't know. I don't know. I don't have a 1 year old, who might be screaming, and therefore I want to be in the family zone so that people aren't annoyed at me. I have a pretty well behaved, almost 8 year old. So I don't know what I was thinking. In fact, the other two trains, I immediately the same moment I booked them all together. I was like, no, let me book in the quiet zone. Because in Italy, we don't have these choices. It's just you book in the, like, you get first class or second class. That's the choices.
Mm-hmm.
And in these Austrian trains, you have the silent zone, you have the kids zone, you have the bike zone if you're bringing a bike.
Hmm.
And so it was the first train that we took, and there were lots of kids in there. So it was a huge mistake. That was not quiet.
No.
But there was this baby. I mean, I guess I should say toddler, probably a 2-year-old, who sort of wandered away from her parents. And she was like sitting in the middle of the aisle on the train, like 4 or 5 rows in front of her parents.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about you, and I don't think you have to be an Italian to be grossed out by the floor of a train, right?
Sure. Yes.
I mean, it's gross.
Yeah. It's not a lot.
And
You don't picture people mopping in there a lot.
No. And this little tiny, sweet little girl in a little dress is crawling all over the floor. At one point, she went under one of the seats, like someone else's seat. We kept looking back at her because we couldn't see where her parents were.
Mm.
And she literally put her face flat down, like her mouth, nose, forehead on the ground under one of the seats. And I was just like, why is this child's parents not grabbing her and bringing her back to where they are and being like, don't touch the floor? So again, I come from Italian perspective where they're overly concerned with cleanliness. But another situation, again, a train situation, this father was getting on the train. You know how those trains are. Like there's 2 big steps to get up onto the train.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's like underneath the steps is like the train tracks. And I see this father, he's got a suitcase in either hand. And it was just the father and like a 3-year-old boy. The father gets up on the train with his suitcases and the little boy is just on his own.
Mm-hmm.
And his father's not looking back. He's not like reaching down a hand. And the little boy is just getting up on the train and following his dad. And I'm like, oh my God, aren't you scared that your kid has maybe fallen and you didn't notice? Or, I'm honestly torn because part of me is like, yes, teach the kids to be self-confident and to be self-sufficient. Great. But on the other hand, I'm like, your kid might fall into the train tracks.
Yeah. Seems like a dangerous situation to just depend on like duckling mode, where it just follows you along.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And
Right.
I mean, just in general, I just felt like there were always a lot of times there's like kids just wandering around the hotel. And I'm like, where are your parents?
Mm-hmm.
That's maybe less dangerous, but I mean, I was just struck by that difference.
Yeah.
Italian parents are very careful with their kids, I feel.
I mean, I get the impression that American parents are the same way at this point.
Helicopter parenting.
Helicopter parenting. Yeah. Do they call that helicopter parenting in Italy?
No, they do not. But I think that they do it, whether they know what it's called or not. I think Italian parents are bigly into kind of curating their children's lives. I mean, you see it in the way that children don't move out of the house. It's like, why should I move out? My mother does everything for me.
Yeah, right.
However, one thing that I think is different between Italian parents and American parents is when you go to the playground in Italy, the parents are like sitting on the benches chatting with each other or on their phone or even sometimes having a drink, while their kids are playing. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think American parents are like, I've got to be involved. I've got to be on the swing with my child or I'm a bad parent. And I think Italians don't necessarily have that compunction. At the pool where I really take swimming lessons, the parents go and have a drink while their kids are having their swimming lesson. Like they go sit in like the little cute outdoor bar and they have a prosecco while their kids are swimming. And me as an American mom, I'm like, no, I gotta be there. I gotta be sitting and watching him. And so I do think it's not totally the same, but there are definitely similarities.
Well, it's definitely not the same in that there wouldn't be a bar built next to the pool in the United States.
Part of the pool.
Yeah, as a part of the pool. If the parents were drinking, which they might be at certain points, it would be like in a traveler's coffee mug. Whatever they had, they would have brought with them to suffer the lesson with their friends. But but yeah, I mean, what a revelation if there was a bar actually hooked to the spot. I could see that changing behavior. I mean, we don't do like, arts festivals or anything like that without having a beer garden. So we're not too many steps away. Kids' fairs often have a beer garden.
Oh, that's nice.
But I don't know. There's something also indignified about a beer garden, in my opinion, where you're like stuck within like these fences, in the hot sun, trying to choke down your beer while your kid's talking to you through the fence because they can't come through.
Okay, that's another big difference, and I don't want to go too off topic because this isn't US and Italy difference
Right.
episode, but the fact that kids can be in bars and places where alcohol is served, I think is a plus in Italy. I'm not sitting here being like, we should all be drunk while we're parenting or anything like that.
Yeah.
But like in Italy, like you see parents who go out to aperitivo and they're out to have a drink, a spritz or a glass of wine or whatever it is in a outdoor cafe, and their kids are there. Now maybe there's a playground nearby and their kids are playing, or maybe their kids are just playing around in the piazza or sitting down with them. But it's not this separation of like, okay, it's mom time. I'm doing mom time now, and now I'm going to go do adult time. It's kind of all mixed up together.
Yeah,
which I do appreciate.
I can't speak for the entire United States, but in Washington, there are places where parents can go and get a drink where the kids can be with them, but there needs to be this arbitrary line between the bar and where the kid is sitting. For instance, if you picture a typical bar with a bunch of bar stools along it, let's say, if there's a railing behind that, then the kids and the parents can sit on the other side of the rail and be not in violation. If the kids were sitting next to their dad at the bar, that would be a problem. If there's no rail, like the bar is part of a big room, then the kids can't be in there.
That's so weird. That's so weird. But I do remember that from growing up, and I remember there being something so illicit about the bar.
Oh,
like
yeah.
It's like this dirty, scandalous place.
Yeah, I believe you and I got kicked out of a... Remember, we got kicked out of we went to like a fancy hotel in Bellevue when we were teenagers because they had a like band playing or something where you thought it would be fun to go see some live music. And of course we didn't look 21, we looked like 15 or whatever. And they came up to us and were like, do you have any ID? And we're like, no. But yeah, we're 21. We're not going to order anything, I remember saying, like, we're not going to order anything. We're just here for the music. And they're like, you need to get out.
Yeah, I remember that now.
Yeah. Anyway, give me another difference between Italy and Austria.
Okay, this is small, but bottled water is so much more expensive. Obscenely more expensive. Like I'm talking a big bottle of either still or sparkling water, same. $6.50 we were getting charged in some cities, whereas the same bottle of water in Italy would be $2, so maximum $2.
You have to buy the water. They won't just give you tap water.
No, you can ask for tap water, but some places charge you for tap water too. Not every place, but some of the places. So what we ended up doing was like we because both Claudia and I like to drink sparkling water at dinner, but Aurelio obviously doesn't. So a lot of times we'd order like a medium-sized bottle of sparkling water for us, and then some like a carafe of tap water for Aurelio, because the tap water there is fine. It's it's totally drinkable. But still, I was just like looking at this menu and I'm like, how can you charge $6.50 for a bottle of water? And even the little bottles, like in Italy, if you go into a bar, like a coffee bar, you buy a bottle of water, it's $1 to $1.50. And there it's like $2.50 to $3. I feel like Italy is, especially Rome, the center of Rome is an area that will try to squeeze money out of you any way they can, but they don't do it in the water, which I appreciate. Yeah, I was shocked by that. But on the other hand, I felt like if you bought something, like if you bought coffee at a coffee shop, at a bar, what we call a bar in Italy, coffee bar, and you went and sat down at the tables there, even if the tables were in like some insanely beautiful place, like on the top of a mountain, we occasionally went to these, you climb the mountain, there's a coffee bar up there, which is obviously awesome.
Yeah.
And you think, okay, the seats on the terrace, like right in front of the mountain, they're going to charge you double if you sit there. Like that's what they do in Italy. If you wanted table service, it'd be like $8 for whatever it is. Your ice cream would be $8 instead of $1.50.
Totally.
And you just go in there, you order from the bar, and I'm like, can we sit at the table? They're like, sure, go ahead. No extra charge, nothing. So I appreciated that a lot. So
You're just reminding me of some of the things I can't stand about being over there. I mean, I was thinking like when you first said that they charge a lot of money for a bottle of water, I was thinking to myself, oh, well, maybe that's to deter people from buying bottles of water because they do that kind of stuff here sometimes where it's like we need to like cut down on how many plastic bottles people are consuming, so we're going to charge you more for this thing so that you think twice about buying it. So I was like at first thinking that, but no, they're just charging you for water at a restaurant, which I always find just, I guess that's an American thing, so irritating to have to pay for water. I mean, I totally get it in countries where the water is not drinkable to a foreigner, let's say, then I get it. You got to pay for water at dinner. But Italy's water is perfectly fine. So it's always bothered me that they charge me at all.
Well, Italy won't charge you for tap water. And by law, they have to bring you tap water if you ask for it. So you can always ask for tap water if you want it and you don't feel like paying for it. But at least it's not that expensive. But yeah, these were glass bottles of water. So there isn't the plastic thing. And usually restaurants that serve water in glass bottles, they send them back. You know, they recycle them through the whatever the company is. But anyway, yeah, I just think it's a way to make money personally.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I get it. What else you got?
Okay, a few more. The trains are way slower. You would think, wow, Austria, you know, Germany, that whole part of the world, like, wow, the train service is going to be amazing. I purchased the tickets on a website, so I was able to see the times of the trains, like how long they were, and I wanted to book the quickest trains. And in all the cases, I booked the quickest train that was possible, and in all cases, they were really slow, and they made so many stops. In Italy, if you go to Florence from Rome, there are no stops in between if you take the fast train. It's a straight shot, and you're there in an hour and a half. And there are even direct trains from Rome to Milan that don't make any stops. Not all of them. Some of them stop in Florence and or Bologna, but you can get it. In Austria, it's like every, 15 minutes making a stop. And the train, you can feel that the train has the capacity to go fast, but he never really gets there because he keeps having to stop. So our last train was from Innsbruck to Vienna, and it took 5 hours, and it was actually late. The train was late, which you'd think, oh, in Austria the trains are running on time, but no, it was like 45 minutes late, which was really, really frustrating.
Well, and how did they compare? Like, are they more comfortable? Are they any different? Do they look like the same kind of
actually they're not as nice. From what I saw, the Eurostar, like the Frecciarossa, which is the fast train, was a little bit nicer. Not much nicer, but a little bit nicer, like a little bit cleaner. But I will say that I appreciate the silent car on the Austrian trains, which I don't think exists in Italy.
Not that I've ever seen.
No. I've seen it on a German train before, but never on an Italian train. But the buses. So we took a bus one time when we were in the mountains, and it said, the bus is going to pass at 1:03, and we're standing there, and it was the bus once an hour. So we're like, we cannot miss this bus, or we're going to be stuck here for an hour, or we're going to have to walk back. And so we're standing there, and I was like, gosh, I wonder if it'll be on time. Like if we were in Italy, it would not be on time. It would be totally random. It would not follow a schedule. It was like 1:03, click, there's the bus in the distance coming along. And we hop on the bus, and the driver had this like little, looked kind of like a cell phone, little machine. And basically it had, like, as soon as the bus started off again, it had a countdown on it. 2 minutes and 5 seconds, 2 minutes and 4 seconds, 2 minutes and 3 seconds. And basically what it was like, that was the time he had to be at the next stop.
Oh, wow.
And so as he's driving along, he sees the seconds ticking by, and he knows if he's late. So I guess it's just a way to help them be on time. So I thought that was cool.
Yeah. Stressful if you're the bus driver, I feel.
Yeah. But yes, but nice if you're a passenger.
Yeah, for sure. The opposite of the one time I got on a bus in Rome, and the driver, just as we were all sitting down, the driver got off the bus and said, I'll be back in a little bit. At least that's as much as I could understand of his Italian. And then he was gone for like 15 minutes. I don't know what he was doing, but bathroom break? I'm not sure.
Maybe. It's awful. That's awful. So here's something strange that I don't know, like, how this is handled in a lot of different countries. So the hotel we were staying at had a spa, And they had a family spa and an adults only spa because it was kind of a hotel that caters to families. They wanted to make sure that, if your kids want to go to the spa with you, they have the opportunity to, but there's also an area where kids are not allowed. So parents can, or, whatever, any adult can just relax without having kids around. And in the adult spa, there were saunas and steam rooms and just areas where you could sort of relax. You were not allowed to wear your bathing suit. So you could keep covered in a towel. You didn't like have to flash everybody. It wasn't like the rule that you have to flash people, but you could totally be naked. It's totally co-ed. In the big sauna, I walked in there first couple times, saw plenty of parts, and you try to keep your eyes to yourself. But, it's the first time, you walk in, you're like, oh my gosh, this is so weird. And, you're covering yourself up. But by the end, you're like lying there totally nude like everybody else because you're like, what? Who cares?
I'll never see these people again.
Yeah. And there's even like this one area of the spa. There was there's one of the steam rooms with a glass window that looks into another part of the spa where there's like a little salt pool where you can sort of go in, and it's supposed to be really good for your skin. It's a very small pool. Like, you're not doing laps in there, but it's bigger than like a hot tub. And there's obviously a shower right next to it because obviously if you've just come out of the sauna, you're sweating. You don't want to get in the pool with your sweat. So like I there was like a couple in the sauna, middle-aged couple, they were fine. They were like totally normal people and not being weird in any way. And I came out and I was like, okay, I want to go in this pool, but like now I have to basically shower naked in front of these people. and then I'd go in the pool and like there was literally like a light like that shining into the pool because it's a very dark space right inside the spa. So there's this light inside the pool and I'm like, whatever, okay. I'm just gonna go with it. And I thought, this I don't think this would happen in Italy. It seems to me that, and like I can't swear to that, but I just don't feel like Italians are as liberal and free about that kind of thing.
Is this what the Roman baths used to be like?
Well, yes, but they were not co-ed.
Yeah.
People were totally naked in the Roman baths, but it was men. If I recall, it was men in the morning and women in the afternoon. So there would be, you wouldn't come across someone of the opposite sex. But I know that in Scandinavia, that's how they do it. I have a friend who's Finnish, and I visited her family in Helsinki, and in Finland, like pretty much every apartment building of any size has a sauna in the building because it's so much part of their culture. And my friend said, yeah, like I just grew up going to the sauna and you sit there naked, like next to your dad. And it's like not weird. It's just totally normal to sit there because, it's too hot in a sauna to even cover yourself up with a towel. So you just sit there naked and it's no big deal. In Finland, like that seems totally right because that's how Finnish people are. They're like very practical. I don't know how to say it. Like they're very, and my this Finnish friend of mine, she even said, she was like, when you grow up in Finland, like there's no dating. Like people don't go out on dates. Young people, they go out all together. And then when you want to have sex with someone, you basically go up and ask them. You're just like, do you want to have sex? And they're like, either yes or no. And I remember when I felt like I was ready to have sex, I just like, there was a guy that I liked and I just went up to him and I was like, he's a guy she knew from school. I just said, do you want to have sex? And he was like, yeah. Like, it's just, they don't have any, they don't make a big deal out of it. Whereas I feel like Italians, it's all about like the chase, and it's all about, flirtation and the game and the dance and, playing hard to get, So I feel like from north to south, there is this big cultural difference in that sense. I was surprised that Austria was, I'm not totally surprised, but, I was like, okay, so they go the Finnish way, just totally naked in the spa.
Did you know that it was going to be like that when you booked the tickets?
No, I didn't know. And like I said, I could have sat with totally covered up with a towel and that's fine to do. But, you're going to see naked people in the spa. It doesn't bother me, but it just kind of made me wonder, like, would this happen in Italy? Would this happen in central southern Italy? Probably not.
Yeah, I don't think it definitely wouldn't happen here.
Well, yeah. And I was wondering about that too. I was like, is this how it is in America? Because like, I haven't lived in there for so long. I don't even know.
I mean, I haven't been to so many spas that I am super well versed, I would say, but I do know that there is one spa that's a naked spa that's for females only that is
Mm-hmm.
near the Seattle area, and that it's kind of an anomaly, and everybody says it's so great there, it's so nice there. In most spas, I feel, I don't know, I'm just thinking about like I think there is a lot about sort of covering up, I imagine, like I think it's like put on your bathing suit and shower ahead of time. Or
Right.
if it's like a skin treatment with somebody else, it's like the person is well versed in how to move that towel around without ever exposing anything on you, you know?
Yeah.
So,
For sure, for sure. I remember
mhm.
the first time I had a massage in somewhere. It was somewhere in Central Europe. I think it was in Slovakia. It was a man who was
Uh-huh.
massaging me. And usually in the States, like they give you the little paper underwear, right?
Oh, I don't know. I've never seen paper underwear. Normally you're like naked, but they have blankets over you and they know how to move the blankets around so that you're
Ah,
nothing's
okay.
ever showing.
Okay. Okay. Well, in Italy, anyways, like when you get a wax, you've got like the little paper.
Oh,
I mean, they're
really?
not, yeah, they're not made of paper, but they're made of like they're disposable,
Hmm.
like a little disposable thong underwear that you wear. And I've been given those during massages as well. And I just remember being in Slovakia and being like, okay, so we're just
We're
totally
throwing it off.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. But
uh,
it's funny, like all of this talk reminds me that, and I get it. I get it why Italians travel in Italy. Italy has so much. It has so many different types of landscape. It has so many different types of cities, art. There's so much. There's so much nature, so much varied nature from Sardinia to the Dolomites that a lot of Italians just don't feel the need to go outside of Italy a lot, when
mm-hmm.
they're, planning their like yearly vacation.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so valuable to go outside of your country. I mean, obviously, I'm stating the obvious because this is a podcast about going out of your
Exploring.
comfort zone and
Yeah.
exploring and going to new cultures. So I'm really not saying anything new, but these little things were like, oh, they do it differently here. Oh, here we
Mm.
go to the spa totally naked. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It is a good reminder of, just reminding yourself that people are not all the same and people live differently, and there's not one right way to do something. And it's interesting to see how other people live.
Yeah.
Another thing that struck me was just how the people who work in service, whether they're waiters and waitresses or people in shops, like they come across in Austria, they come across at first glance as being kind of not very friendly. They're very sort of serious and not smiling when they first
Mm-hmm.
meet you. But after a while, it's like all you have to do is like make one step towards them, like ask them for something in a sort of nice way. And all of a sudden, they become super helpful and super kind and super accommodating. I just thought that was also interesting because I feel like in Italy, you might get, and in the States as well, like you might get the opposite. Like you might get someone who's over the top friendly and helpful, like when you first meet them and you're smiling and charming. Like in Italy, you get the charm. It's all about
Mm.
the charm,
Mm-hmm.
and the way women talk, especially, and men too. Like they have a way of charming you and making you like them.
Hmm.
And I just don't get that. I didn't get that in Austria. Like there was no like sense of, okay, now I'm going to make you like me. Now I'm going to be really, fascinating and charming.
Mm-hmm.
But nevertheless, this little sort of warmth, spark of warmth comes out that maybe is more authentic. I don't know.
Hmm. Customer service wise, though, better than what you get in Italy? Because I know you always hate the customer service.
I can't really say better or worse. It's different. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
without being too stereotypical and putting everyone in one category, I do feel in Italy like, when you walk up to someone in a shop, like they know the right things to say and they say it with a smile and they say it with this sort of like sparkle in the
Mm-hmm.
eye, but like go deeper and they kind of seem like they're annoyed that you're even there and they're annoyed that you're even talking to them
Mm-hmm.
and they're not actually being helpful.
Right.
Whereas in Austria, I felt like, yeah, nobody's trying to charm me right now, but there was something more authentic in them when they did say, "Oh, of course, here it is," or whatever, I'm asking for. It just seemed like a little more spontaneously friendly, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I mean, I think here people are in the US are pretty friendly, generally speaking.
They are.
Yeah. And it's sort of expected that your job, if you're in any service industry, is to be attentive to a certain degree. You know, if you're completely slammed, people understand. But if you're not, people kind of expect you to be attentive if anything's going on, you know?
Yeah, well, they do have the tipping sort of
Right.
culture in the States. It doesn't exist as much.
Yeah, but I mean,
in
even
Europe.
in a clothing store, like you can't walk in without somebody being like, "Can I help you find something?" And sometimes it makes you not want to go in the store. You're like, "No, I don't want
Yeah.
to yell." Get away from me.
But don't most people in shops work on commission?
I don't know if most. I think it would depend on the level of shop. Like, I think if it was an expensive store, then maybe. But if it's like a TJ,
I feel like at the Gap when I was
The
growing
Gap,
up,
yeah,
and I'd go to the Gap, they'd be like, okay, just tell them that Marcy would help you,
Mm.
and then Marcy gets her 10% commission or whatever, 5%
Yeah, I
commission.
don't really know. That's a good question. I've never worked in retail in that regard, so I can't say.
Neither have I, but I feel like that is, or at least it used to be the case in most big chain shops and stuff. Whereas in Italy, unless it's run by the owner, which you do get sometimes, like you're in a small boutique and the owner is actually the one helping you,
Yeah.
which is great, usually great, unless they think you're going to steal from them and then they follow you around, which is not so great. But, usually when you're in a shop, it's like the salespeople, like they could not care less in Italy. If you buy something, if you find something.
Yeah,
so
they're just counting the hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, cool. Well, welcome back. It's nice to see your face again. It was
You
lonely
too.
in the office without you.
Oh,
And I guess we'll leave it there. And until next time, this is The Bittersweet Life. I'm Katie Sewell.
I'm Tiffany Parks.
Join us again. Bye. If you love the show, take a moment to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. It means the world to us. Thanks.